Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hi, Scott.
Hello, Jason. How are you today?
Pretty good. I'm looking forward to talking some soccer. It's kind of strange right now. We're kind of in a bit of a lull overall, but there's still a few things going on, and I think we got a few more topics to hit before the year wraps up.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed by the number of topics you were able to produce as recommendations for us to talk about today. So happy to dive into those. I know we're approaching the holiday season, and we do have plans for a little bit of a break at some point. But there's always some soccer-related topics to discuss, and just keen to do another episode today.
So, if you are a new listener, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
The YYC Soccer Podcast focuses on soccer in Calgary. We talk about the sport at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We talk about the teams and the players from Calgary's soccer community, whether we're talking about the grassroots or amateur leagues and teams, all the way up to local university soccer, as well as the professional level, Calgary FC.
This week, we're going to hit a bunch of topics, and I think let's just dive right into them. How does that sound, Scott? Sound okay?
That sounds good. I know we're going to talk a little bit about NCAA. We're going to talk about CanPL draft, which is coming up. We also recently found out that Calgary is going to host the futsal national championships again next spring. Yeah, there's always good topics to talk about for our podcast.
For sure. Let's start off with the NCAA women's tournament. So we've been following along pretty closely with the University of Memphis Tigers, which have 4 Calgarians on their team. And last time we recorded, they had made it to the final 16 and they played Pittsburgh. In that final 16 matchup, they lost rather decisively at 3-0. That's kind of the end of their season at this point. So sort of time to look ahead and sort of see where things are going to go for these 4 Calgarians and where they're going to end up here next season and beyond. What do you think, Scott?
So of those 4, are there 2 graduating or 3?
Yeah, two graduating, Maya Jones and Grace Doherty.
Yeah, and I know we've mentioned on this podcast, Maya Jones is likely to turn professional. This is her, I think, 5th season with the Tigers. The NWSL college draft date, you mentioned, hasn't been announced yet, but is often in January.
They hadn't announced an official date yet, but it should be early in the new year.
Okay, and is the NWSL adding 2 teams for next season?
Yeah, they're adding in, I believe there's a San Francisco-based team, and also they're bringing back the Utah team, because the Utah team was there, and then it moved to Kansas City, and now they're adding a new expansion team. So 2 more teams, which means more opportunity for players, and that's 2 more sets of import spots, which probably make it a little easier from her perspective there. So it's probably likely that she'll declare for that draft, and she indicated last summer that she was at least going to see what happens in the NWSL draft.
Yeah, I wanted to declare at the very least. Given the season she's had with the Memphis Tigers, you have to assume that she's made her name known. She's made her case known to the pro level. Obviously, Memphis had a fantastic season, making it all the way to the NCAA Final 16. Maya Jones seemed to be a real leader on that team this year, scoring a buttload of goals and contributing a lot to their success. She seems a lock to go on to a pro career. Grace Doherty is the other Memphis Tiger from Calgary who's graduating. We're not sure about her plans. I don't think we've talked to her on the podcast yet, but she has also had a fantastic year, both with Memphis and before that with Foothills WFC in UWS during the summer.
Kudos to the Memphis Tigers women's team, and we'll continue to follow with interest and see if they bring more Calgarians into the fold. But I kind of expect that Anna Hauer will be back again next year. She had a great freshman season, and Izzy Monk still has eligibility, so I'm presuming she'll still be around as well.
Yeah, it was too bad to see that they their phenomenal season ended with kind of a whimper, losing 3-0 to Pittsburgh. Makes me wonder just how good that Pittsburgh team was, because Memphis was on such a roll before that, winning like 16, 17, or 18 games straight.
Okay, let's turn our attention to the Canadian men's national team. And I don't think we have a whole lot to add in here from a Calgary perspective, but they did play 2 matches this past week, and Sam Adekugbe was on the roster for both matches. And that first crazy match, remember we were talking about that last podcast, the big monsoon or typhoon or whatever it was, match was rained out. They played it on Saturday morning. Well, Adekugbe played in that one the full 90 minutes and Canada won 2-1. But in the second match, where they also played Jamaica and Toronto, he didn't see the field.
Yeah, that was a disappointing result in Toronto, especially considering Canada had a pretty decent first half and they just kind of fell apart in the second. And it seems like not that long ago there seemed to be 3 or 4 Calgarians called up for these national team windows, and now it seems like Sam Adekugbe is the only Calgarian kind of on the team's radar for call ups. But good to see him continue to get picked. He's been playing in Vancouver, and it seems like coming back to North America hasn't really impacted his standing with the national team because he seems to be a consistent choice for the men's national side.
Definitely. And I guess we'll have to see who ends up getting selected to be the head coach. And that will probably play into the type of formations they play and exactly what players will be more familiar to that coach.
Yeah, we'll have to see what Carlo Ancelotti wants now.
Yeah,
probably not him. We'll see. I'm curious to see who will get the job, actually.
Willie Akio from the Cavs also was involved in some national team action, and he was with South Sudan. They played a couple World Cup qualifiers against Senegal and Mauritania. They were both played in Senegal. In the first match against Senegal, they lost 4-0. Akio wasn't dressed. But in the second match against Mauritania, it ended up being a 0-0 draw. He did play the first half.
Yeah, and was subbed out at halftime. Great experience for him to be called up to South Sudan yet again. It's too bad he didn't get to see the field against Senegal. That would have been probably a career highlight for him, considering some of the guys who were on Senegal, like Sadio Mane and Koulibaly. Good to see that he did get to play against Mauritania. I think this is like the first window for African teams for World Cup qualifiers. So hopefully he'll be a consistent choice for South Sudan throughout that qualification.
He's been doing some vlogs, and he was doing some vlogs from Senegal. He has, I think, an Instagram channel set up or something like that. But I did see a couple things that he had posted. So he actually did have a bunch of things prior to those games. So kind of interesting to see his point of view on things. And I'm going to try and make sure to link those in so some of our other listeners that aren't aware of it can check it out.
Yeah, if you're not following Willie Akio on social media, I'd actually recommend doing so because he is very social media savvy and he's very active on quite a few different platforms. I think he also at one point had a YouTube channel where he was doing a lot of stuff that was pretty neat and revelatory regarding like what it was like to be a professional soccer player. So if you're into that kind of like behind the scenes content, he's a great person to follow. One other Calgary connection player who was in action during the international window was Kenija Elva, former Calgary Southwest United player who recently declared that he would be playing for St. Lucia, which is the country of his parents' birth, or his birth, I believe, but he grew up in Calgary. He did play in both of St. Lucia's matches over the international window. Did not score, but played both of them.
Let's move to the women's side of the international window here. And the Canadian U17 team assembled for a training camp in Portugal here this past week. And Calgarian Kaylee Hunter was part of the squad. And we don't really know too much. I tried to dig around and see what I could find out about these matches. They played Portugal twice. They lost 2-0, and then the next game they won 2-0. But I have no information about who played, who scored. Just doesn't seem to be anywhere around.
Right. And for consistent listeners, they may recall that name. We talked a lot about Kaylee Hunter some months back, I think in the summertime. She was the one who, despite being born in, I want to say 2009, making her like 14 or something, she was playing in League One Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went to Vancouver Whitecaps, and she's been there ever since. But yeah, this isn't her first call up to the U17 national team.
Yeah, so it's looking pretty promising that she'll get the call. CONCACAF U17 Women's is in Mexico, I believe.
Yeah, in early February.
Let's talk a bit about Champions Cup, CONCACAF Champions Cup. The draw is coming up really soon. It's on December 13th. First round matches will be a home and away series. Both legs will be played in February. And I did a little bit of digging around to see who it could possibly be that Cavalry will face, because we do know some things relating to who's going to be in what pot. Did you get a chance to look at some of those names, Scott?
Yes, you told me about them. So there's Club America, Monterrey, Tigres, Toluca, and Guadalajara from Mexico. That would be Liga MX. And then from the U.S., from MLS, there's Philadelphia Union, Orlando City, Columbus Crew, Nashville, Cincinnati, and Houston Dynamo. Pretty impressive company to be in for Cavalry, regardless who they end up playing against. I would hope they get drawn against a Mexican team. That would be really cool to see a Liga MX team like Club America come up from Mexico City and see what they can do on a frozen Spruce Meadows pitch in the middle of winter.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool. But it seems like, based on how I understand the draw is going to work, there's no real opportunity in the first round for Cavalry to see, say, a Jamaican side or a Central American side, for example. It's pretty much locked in that we're going to see an MLS side or a Mexican side. I think that's what we're looking at, just based on the CONCACAF rankings and just the way the pots and the selection pots are all set up.
And could it change depending on who wins MLS Cup? Because I know that's coming up.
Yeah, that's really the only thing that can change at this point. I think the Mexican teams are all locked in. I think if I have this right, all of these teams that you mentioned earlier, they're all pretty much in for the most part. I think that they could, if one of those teams wins MLS Cup, then they could actually get a bye to the next round. That's what Inter Miami situation they're in. They get a bye to the next round because they won that tournament there that the Mexican teams were playing against the MLS teams. That would mean that another team from MLS would then rise up into the next, into that pool. It'll be based on updated CONCACAF rankings, which I think come out just a couple days before the draw. I think it's pretty safe to assume it's going to be something very similar to this list and with just maybe a couple minor tweaks.
And I mean, I know a lot of Canadian soccer fans follow MLS, but I don't think a lot follow Liga MX. And I have to confess, I don't either, but I do know that Mexican teams tend to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? So I think there's a gap in overall quality between Liga MX and MLS. So even if you go through these Mexican teams rosters and you don't really see any players that you recognize, doesn't mean that it's not a phenomenal team. And it would be very interesting to see how Cavalry matched up, especially with home field advantage in the middle of winter against a very, strong Mexican club. That would be a tough challenge for them, no matter what circumstances the game is played in.
Yeah. And I think the thing that could be really interesting is that on the surface, you'd think, well, maybe they're not going to send their best players. But if it's like Club America, for example, I don't think they want to take a chance of getting embarrassed to a Canadian team. So I think that, they're going to make an effort because they want to make it further in this tournament. And it would be, like I said, I think kind of embarrassing to lose out in the first round. So I guess we'll see. But I kind of think that whoever does end up coming up, they're going to bring a pretty complete squad, I expect.
Right. Yeah. Like you mentioned, they're not going to want to get embarrassed. And like these Club America is probably Mexico City's biggest team, right? They play at the Estadio Azteca. They get huge crowds. They have a huge following. I think some of these other teams, right? Monterrey, Tigres, also really, really big clubs. So they obviously have a lot of pride to play for, and they have a lot to answer for if they don't win or if they don't go far in these tournaments. So no, even if it's not their top lineup, you could expect a very talented team to come up to Canada.
One more topic about the CanPL we should mention is that the date for the U Sports draft was announced, and it's going to be Thursday, December 14th. So it's the day after the draw for CONCACAF. If you are an interested player in applying for the CanPL draft, if you go to the website, the deadline to apply is December 5th. I actually looked at the application process. Not that I was contemplating entering, but just to see what it entails. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. They asked for references and, who your former coaches and where have you played. And it has a lot of the terms of what the deal would be if you were to join a club for the summer, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's going to be happening pretty quick.
Yeah, can you imagine, or can you think of rather any local or Calgary-based university players who you think will apply for this draft, or who you think would be good enough to make the step up to the CPL? I can think of a few off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, they will release the entire list of players that apply, because I did notice it last year that it was available on their website. But I think the one person who's kind of a no-brainer, Sebastian Zitkowski. He was the MVP nationally for U Sports, and I think that he still is considered to be eligible for this draft because he still has eligibility left. So he's kind of the obvious one, I think. What do you think, Scott? You think he'd be a good choice? Do you have any other ones you want to throw in there?
Yeah, he was my first choice. And then also Aiden Dumoulin, the MRU Cougars goalkeeper, who set a clean sheet record this year. And then another one who I didn't actually follow his regular season that well, but the other one who came to mind was Charles Nana, who scored, you may recall, or people may recall who listen to our podcast, he scored the winning goal in the League One Alberta final for Foothills this past year and was named man of the match. He was playing, I want to say he was with Trinity Western, was it?
Yes. It was Trinity Western, and I think he had a pretty good season for them overall. So I think he would be somebody who definitely would be considered for sure.
Yeah, so those are three that kind of came to my mind: Dumoulin, Nana, and then Zitkowski. But there's, we've been following U Sports soccer pretty closely, especially in Canada West, and considering that UBC had a couple of Calgarians this year, MRU was heavy with Calgarian players. David Schaefer's another one who had a great season. I'm not really sure what his long-term plans are, but no, there's a good chance we can see some Calgarians drafted into U Sport. Into CPL in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one more name there, which I think is reasonably likely option is Caden Rosazinski. He was actually drafted by the Cavs a couple of years ago, I believe. Never ended up really featuring for them. He's really turned into a rock at central defense and I think he's won practically most of the all conference, all Canadian awards that you can win. So I think he's somebody that I'll be keeping my eye on, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I think he was in his third year ability, so he'd be one who I imagine would return to finish out his university career if he did go this route.
We're going to do a final wrap-up episode after the CanPL draft and after Cavalry's opponent in the Champions Cup is known. And then we'll have a chance to talk about both those topics before we take a brief hiatus over the holiday season.
Yeah, and we'll come back raring to go in 2024. But one other thing I wanted to mention tonight before we kind of introduce our interview guest is the National Futsal Championships. So, those are coming back. They were held here in just outside Calgary on Tsuut'ina Nation at the Seven Chiefs Sportsplex in April. That was actually one of the first things that we started covering as a podcast, right, shortly after we launched. And that was really fun. I think you and I both went out to a couple days worth of games and kind of took in the competition, and I'm excited to do that again.
Yeah, and actually I got a little nugget of information about this year's how it's going to work, because if you remember last year, there was only a Calgary futsal league, but this year there is at least one other futsal league playing in Alberta. I believe it's in Edmonton. It won't be as simple as if you win the Calgary League this year, the CUSA League, that you are the provincial representative. I believe the top two teams in the Calgary League will be in some kind of provincial championship with the top two teams from the Edmonton League. So it's not going to be quite as simple as it was last year. And I think that speaks to some of the growth that has been seen, that there's been a push to get a bit more organization outside of Calgary, and we're going to see kind of a real provincial championship this time.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's the way it should be, similar to outdoor and traditional indoor games in soccer in Alberta. So good to see that. And yeah, we'll continue to kind of remind listeners about this in the months leading up to it, and I'm sure we'll be intending to. Hopefully, it'll be back at the Seven Chiefs because it's so close to my house.
I think that's the plan. Yeah, I think in the press release they mentioned that, so I think that is the case.
Awesome. Yeah, excited for it.
So this week for a guest we have Jackie Martin. She is the marketing and communications director with Calgary Blizzard, and we had a chance to chat with her about the Dome at Shouldice and how that's been going, because I think the Dome at Shouldice has been really interesting. It's a partnership between Calgary Minor Soccer, the City of Calgary, and Blizzard. And it's now going into its second year of being open. And we want to chat with her a little bit about the experiences of the first year and sort of how it's all worked out.
Yeah, you and I talked about this. It kind of came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, there was just this big dome over one of the artificial turf sports fields at Shouldice Athletic Park. And we kind of talked about how one day it was just there, it seemed like, and there wasn't a lot of warning ahead of time that it was coming. But it's obviously not the first of its kind in Calgary. The old West Soccer or Bears Paw Indoor Soccer Center was converted into a similar air-supported dome a few years ago. So it's really great to see these because it allows more players to play outdoor style soccer year round. You know, the Foothills, the Macron Sports Center way out near Shepherd Industrial Park has been around for 6 years now, but it's a pretty busy place, and having more options like it is obviously great for local players' overall skill and development. Because you don't have to play boarded soccer anymore. If you're a high level player, you can basically play outdoor year round.
So let's run that interview now. The whole idea about doing more indoor facilities is certainly becoming more and more of a thing. So the Shouldice Dome really is, it's a pretty cool project. So kind of wanted to just get a little bit more insight about that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The Dome project, it was a long time in the making. It was something that we really worked hard on for a couple of years. And we, in general, we are able to share the responsibility with Calgary Minor Soccer and Greater Calgary Amateur Football and the City of Calgary to really kind of bring this project to fruition and provide a really great space for athletes to be a part of during the winter season.
Now, how exactly did it all come about? Like, I'm assuming it was a really long gestating project, but it just seemed to me like one day I drove past Shouldice and there was nothing there, and the next day there was a dome, and then it just seemed like it happened very quickly. Maybe it's just I'm not on the inside knowing what's going on, but how did it all come together?
It's something that we've really noticed in the years in soccer and in our community. The sport is growing, and youth sport in general is really growing. And, a couple soccer entities and as well as youth sport entities came together and said, hey, this is something that we really need to consider. We need more spaces for youth to be engaged, indoors and to stay active and healthy, which is, the ultimate goal for our youth and for our adults. So, we really sat down, and there was a talk of, first it was Calgary Blizzard with amateur football in the City of Calgary, and CMSA shortly after came to the table to put together this really great partnership and essentially providing a space for all sport and for our growing soccer community.
With this partnership, like what are the ongoing responsibilities and the Blizzard has in maintaining that partnership, and the benefits? Like, is there preferred scheduling or something like that? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, so I think the biggest responsibility that we share is making sure that the Dome facility remains viable and is utilized to its capacity. Given the demand of both soccer and youth sport in general, we had a high degree of confidence going into this project. In our sport, especially, we live every day with a shortage of facilities in our sport and, in our city overall. So essentially having the responsibility to, overall bring to light the need for more collaborative projects such as the Dome in our community, I feel like that's a big responsibility that we hold as a club and as a partner in the Dome, just allowing for more growth and sustainability overall. I think that as far as the, day-to-day operations and facility scheduling, I think that we just work really closely with our partners to utilize the space effectively, make sure that we always have that space full of athletes and that it's not sitting empty, and work together with our partners to make sure that operations are smooth and we're working together. So, which I think it has been. It's been a really good success last year and this year. So we're really happy with it.
So going into the second year, can we expect to see any changes in the operation of the Dome? Like, was there any sort of learning experiences after setting up for the first year that we can expect to see something different or something changed in going into year two?
I think for the general public, there won't be too many changes. The operations ran pretty smoothly the first year. I think that internally, some of the scheduling pieces that we've worked together to make that a bit of a smoother process. A big part of it is having the partners work so closely together and collaboratively just to make sure that we're working with the City of Calgary site staff to make transitions between sports smooth, so that everybody gets their full time allotment, and just making sure that space isn't sitting empty. When it's being rented out, we're utilizing it to its full capacity. There's minor things that the City of Calgary will always work with us to improve, just to make sure that the membership experience is better. But overall, I would say it's pretty much business as usual. They've done a great job from an operations standpoint.
As far as like a long-term goals for the Blizzard, putting the investment and getting involved in this partnership, do you have any specific measurable goals as far as where this is going to get you, like a certain amount of hours that you're going to have access, like maybe it's a recruiting advantage, or is there anything in particular that, looking sort of at from the big picture point of view, that you are sort of want to measure as the benefits?
Yeah, I mean, for us in the short term, the Dome really met an immediate facility shortage that we were experiencing as a club. Our sport is growing up exponentially, and we really felt the need to provide a space to engage our athletes, improve overall sport experience. So that was the short-term goal for us, which I think we really achieved in partnering in this project. Some of the long-term goals, I would say, it has really allowed us to work with some excellent partners and build really great relationships within our city, not just within soccer, but our neighboring sports as well within football. We really want to use Shouldice as a launch pad. I think that what we really need to understand in our city in youth sport is that our sports are continuing to grow, and by improving facility access to the wide variety of sports is only going to engage athletes more. It's going to allow for sustainability in our industries. So I'd say the benefits are expanding beyond the Dome, right? It's unifying our communities, our sports, not just in soccer, working collaboratively with one another to essentially shine light on opportunities to develop more facilities in the future. I would say that is a very long-term goal, is to have access to more facilities in our future, which would allow for growth in our game.
So are the Blizzard looking and considering other projects, whether they would be further indoor projects or outdoor projects, like other infrastructure type setups going forward to help continue this kind of growth?
That's a great question. I think that any growing organization always needs to continually be looking for the next project. I think that Shouldice has been such a great experience for us, and again, our sport is growing exponentially, and we've seen that in Calgary minor soccer. We've seen that in our own individual clubs. So I would hope that there will be future projects as we grow, and I think anytime you want to expand on your player pathways and be partners in different leagues, facilities are going to be a big conversation piece in that growth. So I think that future projects would be an exciting exciting conversation piece. So never turning down new opportunities for sure.
With that answer, I thought of one more question I just wanted to ask. Now, we've been spending most of the time here talking about indoor facilities. What about, from the point of view of the Blizzard, what about outdoor facilities? Like, one thing Calgary really lacks is small venues that, for example, the League One Alberta team could play in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that is kind of on the radar screen for the Blizzard, like having sort of a quote unquote outdoor home where, for example, it would be your own venue where you could have League One Alberta games and that sort of thing? Is that something which you're thinking about?
Of course, as part of a strategic plan, you always want to venture into having great facilities to attract, different leagues and members. So for us, we had the opportunity to work with some good partners in our League One outdoor team, which created a really excellent game day environment. I think that's a big part of that league is to really bring people together to enjoy the game in one space. We do need more outdoor venues as well. Again, it comes down to growth and being able to anticipate that growth and having a space where you can have a great setup and a great environment for not just the athletes, but also the spectators is something that we should all be looking at. Absolutely.
I'd like to thank Jackie Martin, Executive Director of Calgary Blizzard, for taking the time to talk about Shouldice Dome and about general infrastructure projects. Thanks very much, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks to Jackie Martin for the interview. Very interesting points she made. Like we said before running that interview, this is our last episode for a couple of weeks, but we do intend to recap the CPL U Sports draft and talk about who Cavalry's opponent is going to be in February for CONCACAF Champions Cup. So yeah, no episode next week, but look out for that last one of 2023, probably around mid-December.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can subscribe to this podcast using all the usual podcasting platforms. Head over to our website at yycsoccer.com for more information about how to subscribe or to leave a question or comment. You can also follow us on Twitter at YYCSoccer403. Thanks for listening.